Ikaw ang aking, yeah. Every place got a ghetto, and this is my version of it. Check it out.
You know, I wasn't really fluent in English yet because I grew up in the Philippines. I was very shy, timid. So he said I just sat on the couch for 4 hours without saying anything. Like,
most people know the Black Eyed Peas as the flashy pop group with the hits, the halftime shows, and the big hooks. But behind all the lights and noise was Allan, quiet, steady, and half the reason any of it worked. His story didn't start in a studio. It started in deep poverty in the Philippines, with no electricity, no clean water, and barely enough to get by. Legally blind since childhood, abandoned by his American father, raised in a world that barely saw him. And yet, somehow, he ended up helping build one of the most recognizable music groups on the planet. But here's the thing. While the world was dancing, Allan was fighting to be seen as an artist, as Filipino, as more than just the quiet one. This isn't just a music story. It's about erasure, identity, and a legacy that was almost too quiet to hear, but hit louder than anyone expected.
you know, I wasn't really fluent in English yet because I grew up in the Philippines. I was very shy, timid. So he said I just sat on the couch for 4 hours without saying anything. Like,
Allan grew up in the kind of poverty that most people can't even picture. We're talking no lights, no water, and way too many days working under the sun just so his family could eat. His dad, an American soldier who dipped early and never looked back, which left Allan with a lot of unresolved feelings, especially about race and being abandoned before he even understood what that meant. To make things worse, his eyes were messed up from the start. He had this condition that made everything blurry and shaky, but nobody caught it. So he was legally blind for most of his childhood and just had to deal. Then came Joe. Out of nowhere, this guy from the US swooped in and offered to adopt him and fly him to America for treatment. On the surface, it was a dream come true, but the story's always had this awkward undertone. People have whispered for years that the setup wasn't as innocent as it seemed. Like maybe there were some weird control dynamics going on. Once it became clear that Allan was talented. Nothing's ever been confirmed, but there's this lingering awkwardness around how it all started. Once he got settled in the States, music started pulling him in fast. He teamed up with Will, who was already in the mix with underground hip-hop heads.
I was so young, I needed someone to play with. So Will's uncle was like, oh, Joe is my dad. My sister Deborah could take care of Allan until he's enrolled in school. And Deborah is will.i.am's mom.
They joined forces with a couple other guys and started calling themselves Atban Clan. The sound was gritty and thoughtful, kinda like early backpack rap with bounce. Then, somehow, Eazy-E got wind of what they were doing and signed them. Huge deal. They even dropped a track on one of his projects, but it didn't go anywhere. They were supposed to release an album too, but after Eazy passed, the whole label went off the rails, and that album never saw the light of day. Just like that, everything hit pause.
You know, I'd be like, yo, one day we're gonna have our own tour bus and open up for our favorite groups like Beyonce.
Once the old crew fizzled out, it was just Allan and Will still hanging on. They tried a few names. Black Eyed Pods was one, but eventually landed on Black Eyed Peas. They brought in Taboo to complete the circle, though for a while people kept arguing online about whether Dante was actually in the mix too. He kinda hovered around, but it was never clear what his role really was. Either way, in those early days, the Peas were still deep in their conscious rap era. Soulful beats, smart lyrics, cool underground energy. Critics ate it up, hip-hop heads gave them props. But the charts? Crickets. At that point, they had Kim in the mix too. She brought this raw energy, kind of a fourth member without the official title. But things started shifting. Labels got involved, managers got switched out, and suddenly, the whole operation started feeling like it needed to be more polished. Kim wasn't feeling the direction it was heading in, so she dipped. No drama, just didn't vibe with the new path. That empty spot? It didn't stay empty for long. The plan was just one song, a little feature. But once she got in the room, everything changed. That song turned into a new sound. And just like that, the P's flipped into full-on pop territory. Allan and Will were still in it, but now with bright lights, big hooks, and world domination in the cards. What followed was chaos, in the best way. Back-to-back hits, chart takeovers, world tours, and halftime shows. The kind of career flip that barely makes sense unless you were there, watching it unfold in real time. Through it all, Allan was in the trenches, writing, producing, showing up. But if you only knew the group from music videos or flashy red carpet shots, you'd barely notice him. Will got the genius label. Stacy was the face. Allan, he was either the quiet one or the Filipino guy, which honestly didn't reflect how involved he actually was. He helped build that whole sound from the ground up, and while everyone else was living in HD, Allan could barely see. His eye condition never went away, and he was legally blind the whole time they were blowing up. Stadiums, constant travel, huge crowds. It was exhausting on a level nobody could really understand. He kept pushing, but it definitely left some scars. While the group was blowing up and cashing stadium-sized checks, there was this quiet tension that never made it into the headlines. Will ran the creative side like a boss, calling the shots, crafting the sound, always front and center. And Allan? He was right there, doing the work, helping build everything from scratch. But when it came to the songs that actually meant something to him, he barely got a seat at the table. There were a couple tracks, super personal ones, that really showed who he was. Stuff like the APL song.
Yeah, every place got a ghetto, and this is my version of it. Check it out.
And Bebot. Came straight from his story, immigration, identity, being Filipino, and proud. But instead of hyping them, the label shoved them to the side. Bonus tracks, background placement. Meanwhile, the big flashy singles got all the airtime. It was like the message was, sure, be proud, but not too loud, because the club bangers pay the bills. And yeah, that stung. Allan had poured real pieces of himself into those songs. He wasn't just tagging along, he helped start the group. He shaped the whole sound. But somehow, the deeper stuff got lost in the noise. And even when they were picking up awards or doing interviews, he kept getting reduced to a one-liner. The Filipino one. The quiet one. Never mind the fact that none of it would have existed without him. That tension. It finally bubbled up with Bebot. The track was a full-on Tagalog banger. Zero English, all pride. And that alone made it stand out. On the surface, it felt like just another fun song with a catchy beat. But if you were really listening, you'd hear Allan laying his whole story bare. It wasn't just about flirting or partying. It was about being Filipino, being seen, and taking up space in a group that rarely gave him center stage. To make it hit even harder, they didn't do just one video. They did two. Both were shot by this Filipino-American director named Patricio, and they were loud about culture in a way most major label acts never are. One video dropped the story all the way back to the 1930s. Filipino farm workers, long days, suit-up nights out in Little Manila. Full-on throwback energy. Allan played one of the old heads, ending the clip as an older man looking back on everything he'd lived through. The second video jumped to present-day LA, and it was a full block party. Grills out, kids running around, uncles acting up, cousins dancing, everyone in their Sunday best but it's Saturday fits. It was loud, proud, and all about showing what it looks like to grow up with two cultures, mashed together. But not everybody was clapping. Some Filipino-American scholars came for the second video hard. They called out the way women were shown, saying it leaned into played-out stereotypes, overly sexy girls, doting moms, and barely anything in between. Basically, they weren't mad about the song, they were mad about the way it looked. The director defended it, saying it wasn't about shrinking anyone. It was about putting the culture out there, unfiltered.
Part of music and singing. Itong kanta na pinili ko para sa inyong dalawa.
After years of touring the globe and stacking plaques with the Ps, Allan pulled a full switch-up and headed back to the Philippines. Not to perform, but to mentor. He was one of the main coaches on The Voice PH. For a lot of people back home, it was the first time they saw him front and center, not just in the background with a few bars. He wasn't the guy behind the hits anymore. He was someone people were listening to.
Ang sikana kitang bandang tauli Sana lege me kita minuna.
Opo.
Nagkain na ako sana. Pero magpasensya na kamo kaya masyado.
But TV wasn't the end game. Around that same time, he went all in on his nonprofit work. The APLD-AP Foundation was already up and running, but now he was really pushing. He started dropping tech programs into public schools, rolling out scholarships, and finding ways to get creative kids access to stuff they'd usually only dream about. Later, he linked up with folks from the British Council to launch a training program for young creatives, basically a pipeline for the next gen of Filipino innovators. And it didn't stop there. He popped up at CES, yes, that CES, the giant tech conference, and wasn't there to perform. He showed up as a full-on advocate, repping Filipino talent like it was his mission. Because honestly, it kinda was. He made it clear he wasn't just trying to give back. He was trying to flip the whole script. The big reveal? His foundation was planning a futuristic school focused on EVs, electronics, and next-level design. The kind of place that could actually launch kids into careers without leaving the country behind.